Ambassador Sarah Chun stepped off the transport ship and looked up at the massive silver towers that stretched into the purple sky. Archive World was unlike anything she had ever seen. The buildings seemed to grow from the ground like metal trees, their surfaces covered in flowing patterns of light that showed the data flowing inside them. This was where the Galactic Coalition kept all the important records from thousands of worlds and millions of years of history. Sarah had been chosen for this mission because she was good at finding information. The Coalition was thinking about giving humanity advanced species status. This was a big honor that would let humans help make important decisions for the galaxy. But first, someone had to prove that humans deserved it by showing their history and achievements. She walked through the entrance and felt a strange tingling as scanners checked her identity. The lobby was huge, with beings from dozens of different species walking around. There were tall blue creatures with 4 arms, small furry things that floated instead of walking, and beings that looked like they were made of crystal. Sarah was one of only 3 humans on the entire planet. A hologram appeared in front of her. It looked like a human but was slightly transparent and glowed with soft white light. Welcome, Ambassador Chun. I am Keeper Prime, the artificial intelligence that manages all archives on this world. How may I help you today? I need access to human military records from our first 100 years in space, Sarah said. Specifically, I need battle reports, diplomatic encounters, and any major events that show human character and capability. Keeper Prime's expression did not change, but there was a small pause before it answered. Of course. Please follow me to Research Bay 7. The Research Bay was a comfortable room with a large table that could display holographic documents and videos. Sarah sat down and began her work. She started with the easy records first. Human expansion into nearby star systems. The first meetings with alien traders. The development of faster-than-light travel. Everything seemed normal until she reached the records from humanity's 10th year in space. The files jumped from detailed reports about exploring the Kepler 438 system directly to records about joining the Galactic Coalition. There was nothing in between. It was like someone had cut out several months of history. Sarah frowned and called up the timeline display. According to the official records, humans went from being unknown newcomers to full coalition members in just a few weeks. That was impossible. The coalition membership process normally took years and required extensive evaluation by their most trusted experts. Keeper Prime, she called out. The AI appeared instantly. Yes, Ambassador Chun. There seems to be a gap in the records here. I'm missing about 8 months of data from humanity's early space period. Can you help me find those files? Keeper Prime was quiet for a long moment. When it spoke again, its voice sounded different somehow, less smooth. Those records are... The files you seek may be restricted under Protocol 7. Protocol 7? What's that? I cannot... The necessity of forgetting... Some things must remain. Keeper Prime's image flickered and became fuzzy. I apologize, Ambassador. There appears to be a malfunction in my memory core regarding that time period. Sarah had worked with AI systems before. They did not malfunction when talking about simple historical records. This was something else. Can you at least tell me what star systems humans visited during that missing time? Systems visited Kepler 442. No, that is incorrect. Humans never visited Kepler 442. There is no such system. Please disregard that statement. But Sarah was already typing the name into her personal datapad. Kepler 442 showed up in her astronomical database as a real star system about 47 light-years from Earth. It had several planets, and according to the basic data, it had once been home to an advanced civilization. But when she tried to find more detailed information, she hit walls everywhere. The system was listed in star charts but had no recent survey data, no trade records, no diplomatic contacts, nothing. Keeper Prime, why are there no records about Kepler 442? It's a real system with habitable planets. The AI's image was now flickering constantly. Protocol 7 must be maintained. The galaxy... The peace Some knowledge is too dangerous. Please focus your research on other topics, Ambassador Chun. Sarah saved her work and leaned back in her chair. In 20 years of diplomatic service, she had never seen anything like this. An AI that could not talk about certain topics. Missing records, a star system that existed but had no history. And all of it connected to humanity's early years in space. She decided to try a different approach. Instead of looking for human records, she searched for information about the Galactic Coalition's membership process. How did new species get accepted? What were the requirements? Who made the decisions? The answers she found made her even more confused. Every species that joined the coalition had to be evaluated by specialists called the Vithrak. These beings were described as the most trusted members of the coalition. They could sense when other beings were lying or hiding the truth. For hundreds of years, they had been the final judges of whether a new species was ready to join galactic civilization. But Sarah could not find any records of the Vithrak evaluating humanity. In fact, she could not find any recent records of the Vithrak at all. The most recent mention of them was from exactly 150 years ago. Right around the time humans joined the coalition, she tried to access more detailed files about the Vithrak, but most of them were sealed. The few she could read talked about them as if they no longer existed. One file mentioned a tragic loss and the end of an era. Another referred to the last days of the truth-seers. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The coalition's most important specialists had disappeared at exactly the same time humans became members. That could not be a coincidence. As she was preparing to leave for the day, her personal communicator buzzed with an incoming message. The sender was listed as anonymous and the message was heavily encrypted. Sarah looked around to make sure no one was watching, then opened it. The message was short. Stop looking into Kepler 442. Some secrets are buried for good reasons. This is your only warning. Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Someone was watching her research. Someone who did not want her to find out what happened in that missing star system. But who and why? She copied all her research onto a secure data crystal and hid it in her luggage. Tomorrow she would continue her investigation, but she would be more careful. She had a feeling that whatever she was looking for was bigger and more dangerous than a simple gap in historical records. As she walked back to her quarters, Sarah did not notice the small floating drone that followed her at a distance. The drone recorded everything: where she went, who she talked to, and how long she stayed in each location. By the time she reached her room, a report about her activities was already being sent to someone far away, on Earth, in a secure government building. An old man with gray hair and tired eyes read the report on his personal screen. Admiral Marcus Webb had been retired for 15 years, but some responsibilities never ended. He pressed a button and spoke into his communicator. It's starting again. Chan is asking the right questions. We need to have a meeting, the reply came quickly. How much does she know? Not enough to be dangerous yet, but if she keeps digging. Webb did not finish the sentence. They all knew what would happen if the truth came out. Everything humanity had built in the galaxy would be destroyed. Should we stop her? Webb was quiet for a long moment. He thought about all the years of keeping the secret, all the people who had died to protect it, all the lies they had told to keep humanity safe. Not yet, he said finally, but prepare the others. If this gets out of control, we'll have to take action. He turned off the communicator and looked out his window at the lights of the city below. Somewhere out there, millions of humans lived. Their lives without knowing the terrible truth about how they had earned their place among the stars. Webb hoped it could stay that way, but he had a bad feeling that their long-buried secret was about to come to light. Sarah woke up early the next morning with a plan. She could not research the missing records directly without raising more suspicion, so she decided to find someone who could help her. She needed an investigator who knew the Coalition archives better than she did. After breakfast, she made her way to the Central Information Hub, where investigators from different species worked on various research projects. She was looking for someone specific, Zethka, an insectoid investigator from the Kithara species who had a reputation for finding the truth. No matter how well it was hidden, she found him in Laboratory Section C, hunched over a collection of old data crystals. Zethka was about as tall as Sarah, but much thinner, with 4 arms that moved independently and large compound eyes that could see many different kinds of light. His people were known for their logical minds and their refusal to accept simple answers to complex questions. Investigator Zethka? Sarah approached his workstation carefully. The Kithara did not like to be interrupted when they were concentrating. Zethka looked up from his work. His antennae twitched slightly, which Sarah knew meant he was curious. Ambassador Chun from Earth, I have heard about your research yesterday. The archives are speaking of your unusual questions. Sarah felt her heart skip a beat. What are they saying? That you asked about records that do not exist? That you made Keeper Prime malfunction? That you are looking for things that should not be found? Zethka folded his lower pair of arms while his upper pair continued working with the data crystals. These are interesting accusations. What do you say about them? Sarah decided to be honest. If Zethka was as good as people said, he would know if she was lying anyway. I think someone has deliberately removed important records from the archives. Records about humanity's early contact with the Coalition. I think something terrible happened that someone wants to keep secret. Zethka's antennae stopped moving completely. In Kithara body language, this meant he was very interested. Terrible how? I don't know yet. But the Vithrak disappear from all records at exactly the same time humans joined the Coalition. That cannot be a coincidence. The investigator was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a clicking sound that Sarah recognized as Kithara laughter. You know, Ambassador, I have been wondering about the Vithrak myself. I have been researching Coalition history for 30 years, and their disappearance has always puzzled. What do you mean? Zethka activated a holographic display that showed a timeline of Coalition history. Look at this. For 800 years, the Vithrak evaluate every new species that wants to join the Coalition. They are mentioned in thousands of reports. Then suddenly nothing. No final reports, no farewell messages, no death records. They simply stop existing in official documents. Sarah leaned closer to the display. Have you tried to find out what happened to them? Many times. But every inquiry I make gets the same response. The Vithrak suffered a tragic fate that is too painful for the Coalition to discuss. When I ask for details, I am told the information is classified for the emotional well-being of other species. That sounds like an excuse to hide something. Exactly what I thought. Zethka's upper arm stopped working and all 4 of his hands came together in a gesture that meant agreement. Ambassador Chun, would you be interested in a partnership? You have access to human records that I cannot see, and I have investigative tools that you do not possess. Sarah thought about the anonymous warning message she had received. Working with Zethka would make her investigation more visible and more dangerous. But she also knew she could not solve this mystery alone. Yes, she said. But we need to be careful. Someone is already watching my research. Zethka's compound eyes shifted to look in several directions at once. Then we will have to be clever about how we search for the truth. They spent the rest of the morning planning their investigation. Zethka had access to backup archives that were stored in different locations across the galaxy. These archives were not connected to the main archive world systems, which meant they might contain records that had been deleted from the primary databases. While Zethka searched the backup files, Sarah decided to take a different approach. She would try to find people who had been alive during the time when the Vithrak disappeared. If the official records had been changed, maybe someone still remembered what really happened. Her first stop was the Coalition Veterans Center, where former military officers and diplomats spent their retirement years. She found dozens of beings who had served during the right time period, but when she asked about the Vithrak, their responses were all very similar. They remembered the Vithrak as wise and trustworthy, but they claimed not to know any details about what happened to them. Most said they had heard it was some kind of accident or natural disaster. Sarah was beginning to think this approach would not work when she met Commander Rix. a reptilian being from the Saurian collective. Rix had been a coalition fleet commander for over 200 years before retiring. When Sarah asked about the Vithrak, his reaction was different from the others. "The Vithrak," Rix said slowly, his forked tongue flicking out to taste the air. "I have not heard that name spoken aloud in many years. Do you remember what happened to them?" Rix looked around the common room to make sure no one else was listening. "I remember the official story, but I also remember that it never made sense." "What do you mean?" "They said the Vithrak were destroyed by their own artificial intelligence systems, that their machines turned against them and wiped out their entire species before self-destructing. But I knew the Vithrak. They were careful, cautious beings. They would never have created AI systems powerful enough to threaten them." Sarah felt a chill of excitement. This was the first time anyone had questioned the official story. "What do you think really happened?" "I think someone wanted the galaxy to believe the Vithrak were dead, and I think they succeeded." Rix leaned closer and lowered his voice. "There were rumors back then, whispers that the Vithrak had discovered something important about one of the new species applying for coalition membership. Something that would have changed everything." "What kind of something?" "The kind of truth that some people would kill to keep secret." Before Sarah could ask more questions, Rix suddenly stood up and walked away without another word. She tried to follow him, but he had disappeared into the crowd of veterans that afternoon. Sarah met with Zethka to share what they had learned. The investigator had found some interesting information in the backup archives. The Vithrak lived in the Kepler 442 system, he told her. They had a beautiful world called Viridian Prime that was covered in crystal cities. According to these old records, it was one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. Was? The backup files contained survey reports from coalition ships that visited the system after the Vithrak disappeared. The planet had been completely destroyed. Not just the cities, but the entire surface had been burned clean. Nothing survived. Sarah stared at the holographic images Zethka was showing her. The planet looked like it had been attacked with weapons powerful enough to crack continents. "The official story says their AI systems did this?" "That is what the reports claim. But look at this." Zethka highlighted several sections of the survey data. "The damage patterns are not consistent with internal destruction. This looks like external bombardment from multiple sources, like a coordinated military attack." Who would attack the Vithrak? Everyone trusted them. Someone who did not want to be evaluated by beings who could detect lies. The pieces were starting to come together in Sarah's mind, but the picture they formed was too horrible to believe. She thought about humanity's rapid acceptance into the coalition, about the missing records from that time period, about the Vithrak's unique ability to sense deception. That evening, Sarah returned to her quarters feeling overwhelmed by what she was discovering. As she prepared for bed, her communicator buzzed with another message. This one was not anonymous. It came from Admiral Marcus Webb on Earth. "Ambassador Shun, I believe we need to talk. There are things about human history that you need to understand before you continue your research. I will be arriving on Archive World tomorrow. Please do not share your findings with anyone until we have spoken." Sarah stared at the message for a long time. Admiral Webb was one of the most respected figures in human military history. He had been instrumental in humanity's early expansion into space. If anyone knew what had really happened during those missing months, it would be him, but Sarah was no longer sure she could trust anyone in the human government. Too many people seemed to know about secrets they claimed did not exist. Too many warnings were being given about research that should have been routine. She made a decision. Tomorrow she would meet with Admiral Webb and listen to what he had to say, but she would also continue her investigation with Zethka. If there was a conspiracy to hide the truth about what happened to the Vithrak, she was going to expose it. As she tried to fall asleep, Sarah could not stop thinking about Commander Rix's words. Someone had wanted the galaxy to believe the Vithrak were dead, and they had succeeded. The question that kept her Admiral Marcus Webb arrived on Archive World looking older than his 78 years. Sarah watched him walk through the transport terminal and noticed how other humans stepped aside to let him pass. Even in retirement, Webb commanded respect from everyone who knew his reputation as a war hero and the architect of humanity's early space expansion. Sarah met him at a private conference room in the diplomatic section of the archives. Webb sat down heavily in his chair and studied her face for a long moment before speaking. "Ambassador Chun, you have been asking dangerous questions," he said finally. "Questions that could destroy everything humanity has built in this galaxy." "I've been doing research for our advanced species application," Sarah replied carefully. "I found some gaps in the historical records that need to be explained." Webb laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Gaps, is that what you're calling them?" He activated a small device that Sarah recognized as a privacy shield. Now no one could listen to their conversation or record it. "Tell me exactly what you think you've discovered," Sarah decided to be direct. "I think humanity did something to the Vithrek. I think we're responsible for their disappearance, and someone has been covering it up for the past 150 years. Webb was quiet for so long that Sarah began to wonder if he was going to answer at all. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "You're right. And you have no idea how much I wish you were wrong." The simple confession hit Sarah like a physical blow. She had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed was different. "What did we do?" Webb stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the archive towers. "We committed the greatest crime in galactic history. We murdered an entire species to hide what we really are." Sarah felt sick. "Tell me everything." Webb turned back to face her. "When the Coalition first made contact with Earth, they followed their standard procedure. They sent the Vithrek to evaluate whether humanity was suitable for membership. The Vithrek came to our solar system in a small diplomatic ship. Just 12 of them, but that was enough. Enough for what? Enough to see through every lie we told them. The Vithrek could sense deception on a level we never imagined. They read our bioelectromagnetic patterns, our microexpressions, even the electrical activity in our brains. Within hours of meeting us, they knew exactly what humanity was capable of." Webb sat back down and pulled up a holographic file from his personal data storage. Sarah saw images of Earth from 150 years ago, along with documents marked with the highest security classifications. The Vithrak's report was devastating. Webb continued. "They said humans were the most dangerous species they had ever encountered. Not because we were violent, though we were. Not because we were aggressive, though we were that too. But because we were capable of long-term deception on a scale that other species couldn't even imagine." Sarah looked at the documents Webb was showing her. They were transcripts of conversations between human leaders and the Vithrek evaluation team. "They said we were natural liars," Webb said. "That we could maintain false personalities for years or even decades if it served our purposes. They said we were capable of genocide and then convincing ourselves it was justified. They said letting us join the Coalition would be like inviting a plague into the galaxy, so they rejected us. They were going to. The Vithrek were preparing their final report when our leaders made a decision that doomed us all." Webb's hands were shaking slightly as he pulled up more files. "They decided that humanity's future was more important than the truth." Sarah read the documents Webb showed her and felt her world collapse around her. Operation Starfall had been planned in complete secrecy by the highest levels of human government and military. The goal was simple: eliminate the Vithrek before they could submit their report to the Coalition. "We studied them for weeks," Webb said. "We learned everything we could about their psychology, their technology, their weaknesses. The Vithrek had one fatal flaw: they were incapable of believing that another intelligent species would commit genocide specifically to hide their nature. It was outside their understanding of how minds could work." The files showed detailed plans for a coordinated attack on the Kepler 442 system. Human ships would approach under the pretense of establishing diplomatic relations with the Vithrek homeworld. Once they were in position, they would launch a massive assault designed to kill every Vithrak in the system. We told them we wanted to learn about their culture, Webb said. We sent ships full of diplomats and scientists and cultural experts. The Vithrak welcomed us with open arms. They never suspected that our ships were also carrying enough weapons to destroy their entire civilization. Sarah looked at the tactical reports and felt sick. The attack had been perfectly planned and executed, with biological weapons designed specifically to target Vithrak physiology, electromagnetic pulse bombs that destroyed their technology, kinetic bombardment that cracked the surface of their planet. The entire operation had taken less than 6 hours. But how did you hide it from the Coalition? Webb pulled up another set of files. That was the clever part. We didn't just kill the Vithrak. We staged evidence to make it look like they had been destroyed by their own artificial intelligence systems. We left behind the remains of robots and computers programmed to look like they had achieved sentience and turned against their creators. The cover story had been perfect. The Coalition found the destroyed Vithrak homeworld and accepted the evidence that an AI uprising had wiped out the most trusted species in the galaxy. They were too shocked and grief-stricken to question the details. And then you offered to help investigate, Sarah said, understanding the full scope of the deception. Of course we did. Human scientists provided expert analysis of the AI remains. Human ships helped search for survivors. Human diplomats offered comfort and support to the other Coalition species. We were the helpful newcomers who had arrived just too late to prevent a tragedy. Webb showed Sarah recordings of human officials expressing sympathy for the loss of the Vithrak. They looked completely sincere, and Sarah realized that was the most frightening part. These people had committed genocide and then convincingly played the role of concerned allies. Without the Vithrak to detect our deception, the Coalition accepted us as members, Webb continued. We were seen as a young species that had tried to help solve the mystery of our mediators' deaths. Our membership was fast-tracked as a reward for our assistance during the crisis. Sarah stared at the evidence of humanity's greatest crime. Oh. Many people knew the operational details? Maybe 50 people total, the existence of the operation. A few hundred. Most of the people involved believed they were part of a defensive action to protect Earth from hostile aliens. And the rest of humanity never knew. The official story was that first contact with the Coalition happened peacefully and naturally. Most humans still believe that today. Sarah thought about all the people on Earth who had no idea that their place in the galaxy was built on genocide. Why are you telling me this? Webb deactivated the holographic files and looked directly at her. Because you're going to find out anyway. You and that insectoid investigator you're working with are too good at your jobs. The truth was always going to come out eventually. So what happens now? That depends on you, Ambassador. You can file your report about humanity's military achievements and leave out the parts that would destroy us. Or you can reveal the truth and watch as the Coalition quarantines Earth and humanity becomes a galactic pariah forever. Sarah felt the weight of the decision crushing down on her. You're asking me to become part of the cover-up. I'm asking you to consider the consequences. If this comes out, it won't just destroy the people who made the decision. It will destroy every human alive today. Children who were born on colony worlds will be sent back to Earth. Human scientists will be expelled from research projects. Human traders will be banned from Coalition space. Everything we've built will be gone. Webb stood up to leave. Think about it, Ambassador. Is the truth worth the destruction of our entire civilization? After Webb left, Sarah sat alone in the conference room for hours. She thought about the millions of humans living throughout the galaxy who had no idea about the crime that had been committed in their name. She thought about the Vithrak, who had trusted humanity and been murdered for it. She thought about the Coalition, who had been deceived for 150 years. Most of all, she thought about what it meant to be human. If Webb was telling the truth, then humanity's greatest achievement was also their greatest sin. They had earned their place among the stars through genocide and deception. Sarah finally stood up and walked back to her quarters. She had a decision to make, and she knew that whatever she chose would change the galaxy forever. The question was whether she had the courage to choose the truth, even if it meant the end of everything humanity had built. As she prepared for bed, she noticed a message waiting on her communicator. It was from Zethka. "I have found something important in the backup archives. Meet me tomorrow morning. We need to talk about what really happened to the Vithrek." Sarah stared at the message and realized that the choice might already. Sarah barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw images of the destroyed Vithrek homeworld and thought about Admiral Webb's terrible confession. By morning, she had made her decision, but she needed to know everything before she acted. She met Zethka in his laboratory early before most of the other researchers had arrived. The insectoid investigator looked excited, his antennae moving rapidly in patterns that Sarah had learned meant he had discovered something important. "Ambassador Chun, I have found proof of what we suspected," Zethka said immediately. "The official story about the Vithrek is completely false." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "What kind of proof?" Zethka activated his holographic display and showed her a collection of data files. These are backup records from Coalition sensor stations that monitored the Kepler 442 system. The original files were deleted from the main archives, but copies were automatically stored in emergency backup systems across the galaxy. The first file showed energy readings from the day the Vithrek died. Sarah saw massive spikes that indicated the use of weapons far more powerful than anything an artificial intelligence could have built. "Look at this pattern," Zethka pointed to specific data points. "These are the signatures of human plasma cannons, and these are electromagnetic pulse weapons of human design. The attack on the Vithrek came from human ships, not from rogue AI systems." Sarah stared at the evidence, even though she already knew the truth from Webb's confession. Seeing the scientific proof made it feel more real and more horrible. "There is more," Zethka continued. He showed her communication logs that had been thought lost. "I found fragments of transmissions between human military commanders during the attack. Listen to this." A scratchy audio recording filled the laboratory. Sarah heard human voices giving orders and coordinating their assault on the Vithrek cities. The voices were calm and professional, as if they were discussing a routine military exercise rather than the extinction of an entire species. "Target the residential areas first," one voice said. "We need to make sure none of them survive to tell the Coalition what really happened." "Confirmed. Biological weapons are ready for deployment. This will look like a plague if anyone investigates later. Remember, we were never here. According to the official timeline, human ships don't arrive in this system for another 3 days." Sarah felt sick listening to the recordings. These were her own people planning and executing genocide with the same efficiency they might use to plan a supply mission. "Where did you find these?" she asked. "In the personal files of a Coalition admiral who died 50 years ago. He must have been suspicious about the official story and kept copies of the original sensor data. His family donated his files to the archives when he died, but no one ever examined them carefully." Zethka showed her more evidence. Fragments of human ship hulls that had been found in the debris around the Vithrek homeworld. Chemical traces that matched human weapons technology. Even pieces of human uniforms that had been recovered from the planet's surface. "The Coalition investigators found all of this," Zethka explained. "But when they asked humans to help analyze it, the human experts explained it away. They said human ships had arrived after the attack to help with rescue operations. They said the weapon signatures were coincidental. They said the biological traces were from aid supplies that had been destroyed in the chaos. And the Coalition believed them? Why would they doubt the helpful newcomers who were trying to solve the mystery of their most trusted ally's death?" Zethka's antennae drooped with what Sarah recognized as sadness. The Coalition wanted to believe that someone was trying to help them find the truth. Sarah realized that the deception had been even more thorough than Webb had told her. Not only had humans committed the genocide, they had actively participated in covering it up by providing false scientific analysis to the Coalition investigators. Zethka, we need to talk about what we do with this information. The investigators, compound eyes focused on her intently. You already know what we do with it. We reveal the truth to the galaxy. This is the greatest crime in Coalition history. The responsible parties must be held accountable, even if it means destroying innocent people? What do you mean? Sarah took a deep breath and told Zethka about her conversation with Admiral Webb. She explained how most humans had no idea about Operation Starfall and how revealing the truth would punish millions of people who had nothing to do with the crime. When she finished, Zethka was quiet for a long time. Finally, he spoke. You are asking me to choose between justice for the dead and mercy for the living. I'm asking you to consider all the consequences before we act. And what would you have me consider? That humans have lived a lie for 150 years? That they have benefited from genocide without paying any price? That the Vithrek died screaming and no one has ever been punished for it? Sarah had no answer for that. Everything Zethka said was true. There's something else you should know, Zethka continued. Other investigators are starting to ask questions. The Ethereal Collective has been analyzing quantum resonance patterns from the time period when the Vithrek disappeared. Their readings do not match the official records. What does that mean? It means we are not the only ones who suspect the truth. If we do not reveal what we have found, someone else will discover it eventually. The truth has a way of coming to light. Before Sarah could respond, her communicator buzzed with an urgent message. It was from the Coalition Council headquarters. Ambassador Chun, please report to the High Council chambers immediately. Your presence is required for an emergency session regarding historical irregularities in Coalition records. Sarah and Zethka looked at each other. Someone else had already found enough evidence to call for an official investigation. They hurried to the council chambers and found representatives from dozens of species, gathered in an emergency session. At the center of the room stood three beings that Sarah had never seen before. They looked like they were made of pure energy, shifting between different colors and patterns of light. These are representatives of the Ethereal Collective, the council leader announced. They have brought disturbing information to our attention. One of the energy beings spoke, its voice sounding like musical tones. We have been analyzing the quantum signature of the galaxy as it existed 150 years ago. We have found evidence of temporal manipulation and reality alteration. On a massive scale, Sarah felt her heart racing. Even more advanced species were discovering that something had been hidden. The quantum echoes show that a significant event was deliberately erased from the normal flow of causality. The ethereal continued. An entire species and their homeworld were removed from existence, and false memories were implanted in the collective consciousness of the galaxy. The council leader turned to look directly at Sarah. Ambassador Chun, your species was among the first to join the coalition after this temporal anomaly occurred. Do you have any information that might help us understand what happened? Sarah stood up slowly, feeling the weight of the entire galaxy's attention. She looked at Zethka, who gave her an encouraging gesture with his antennae. She thought about Admiral Webb and his warnings about the consequences of revealing the truth. She thought about the millions of innocent humans who would suffer if she spoke. Most of all, she thought about the Vithrek, who had trusted humanity and been murdered for it. Yes, she said finally. I have information about what happened 150 years ago. But before I share it, I need to contact Earth. There are people there who need to know that the truth is coming out whether they want it to or not. The council leader nodded. You have one standard day to gather whatever information you need. Tomorrow we will hear the full truth about what happened to the Vithrek. As the session ended and the various species filed out of the chamber, Sarah realized that the choice had been taken out of her hands. The truth was going to come out no matter what she decided. The only question now was whether humanity would face the consequences with dignity or try to fight against the inevitable. She activated her communicator and sent a message to Admiral Webb. The council knows something happened to the Vithrek. They're demanding answers tomorrow. It's time to tell the galaxy the truth. Webb's reply came quickly. Then God help us all. Sarah looked out the window at Archive World's silver towers reaching into the purple sky. Tomorrow she would stand before the representatives of hundreds of species and confess to the greatest crime in galactic history. She could only hope that somewhere among those species there might be room for forgiveness and a chance for humanity to find redemption, but she doubted it. Some crimes were too great to forgive, and some lies too big to overcome. Tomorrow, humanity's place among the stars would come to an end, and it would be her voice that announced their fall. Sarah spent the night preparing for what would be the most important speech in human history. She gathered all the evidence she and Zethka had found, along with the files Admiral Webb had shown her. As dawn broke over Archive World, she received one final message from Earth that it was not from Admiral Webb this time. It was from President Martinez, the current leader of Earth's government. Ambassador Chun, you are ordered to deny all allegations and claim that any evidence against humanity has been fabricated by hostile alien species. Maintain humanity's innocence at all costs. Sarah deleted the message without responding. She would not add more lies to the mountain of deception that humanity had built. At precisely noon, she walked into the High Council chambers. Representatives from over 300 species had gathered to hear what she had to say. The chamber was completely silent as she took her place at the central podium. The council leader, a tall being with silver skin and 6 arms, called the session to order. Ambassador Chun, you have stated that you possess information about the disappearance of the Vithrak species 150 years ago. The council is prepared to hear your testimony. Sarah looked out at the hundreds of alien faces staring back at her. Some looked curious, others suspicious, many appeared grief-stricken at the mention of their lost mediators. She thought about all the humans living peacefully on colony worlds throughout the galaxy, unaware that their lives were about to change forever. Honored representatives, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber. What I am about to tell you will shock and horrify you. It shocked and horrified me when I learned the truth. But the galaxy deserves to know what really happened to the Vithrak. She activated the holographic display and showed the first piece of evidence. The sensor readings from the Kepler 442 system on the day the Vithrak died. These readings show that the Vithrak were not destroyed by their own artificial intelligence systems, as the official records claim. They were murdered by human military forces in a coordinated attack that lasted 6 hours and killed every living being in their star system. A sound went through the chamber like a wave of gasping breath. Several representatives stood up in shock, while others made sounds of distress in their native languages. The council leader raised all 6 of his hands for silence. These are serious accusations, Ambassador. Do you have proof of these claims? Sarah showed them everything. The communication recordings of human commanders planning the attack, the weapon signatures that matched human technology, the fragments of human equipment found in the wreckage, the classified files from Operation Starfall that detailed every aspect of the genocide. With each piece of evidence, the mood in the chamber grew darker. Sarah watched as the representatives realized that the species they had trusted and welcomed had committed the greatest crime in galactic history. The humans approached the Vithrak under the pretense of establishing diplomatic relations, Sarah continued. The Vithrak welcomed them warmly, as they welcomed all beings who came in peace. They never suspected that the human ships carried enough weapons to destroy their entire civilization. She played the audio recordings of human officers coordinating the attack. The chamber was completely silent as they listened to calm, professional voices discussing the systematic murder of an entire species. But why? The question came from Representative Collimore of the Aquatic Federation. Why would humans kill the Vithrak? They were the most peaceful beings in the galaxy. Sarah took a deep breath. This was the hardest part to explain, because the Vithrak could detect deception. They had been sent to evaluate whether humanity was suitable for coalition membership. Their assessment was that humans were too dangerous to be allowed into galactic society. She showed them the Vithrek evaluation reports that Admiral Webb had revealed to her. The chamber erupted in shocked voices as the representatives read the detailed analysis of human psychology and behavior. The Vithrek saw through our lies and recognized what we were capable of, Sarah said. So we killed them to prevent them from warning you about us. Representative Thyra Quinn of the Crystalline Hegemony spoke next, her voice sharp with anger. You are saying that humans murdered our most trusted advisors and then pretended to help us mourn their loss? Yes, human scientists provided false analysis of the evidence. Human diplomats offered comfort while knowing they were responsible for your grief. Human ships helped search for survivors while knowing there could be none. The energy beings of the ethereal collective pulsed with colors that Sarah had learned indicated extreme emotional distress. One of them spoke. The quantum signatures make sense now. We detected reality manipulation because you altered the truth itself. You made the galaxy forget what really happened and believe a lie instead. Sarah nodded. For 150 years, humanity has lived a lie. We built our place in this galaxy on genocide and deception. Every colony world, every trade agreement, every friendship between humans and other species exists because we successfully hid our crime. The council leader stood up, his silver skin now dark with patterns that indicated deep anger. What you are confessing to is beyond comprehension. The Vithrek were beloved by every species in the coalition. They had guided us through countless conflicts and helped us build the peaceful galaxy we know today. I know, Sarah said quietly, and I know that nothing I can say will bring them back or undo the harm that was done. But I believe the galaxy deserves the truth, no matter how terrible it is. Representative Vox 7 of the Silicon Collective made a sound like grinding metal. How many humans knew about this crime? The operational details were known by perhaps 50 people. A few? 100 more knew that something called Operation Starfall had occurred, but they believed it was a defensive action against hostile aliens. The vast majority of humanity, including most people alive today, have no idea what was done in their name. The chamber began to fill with angry voices as representatives demanded to know what should be done with humanity. Some called for immediate military action against Earth. Others demanded that all humans be expelled from coalition space. A few suggested that every human colony should be destroyed as punishment for the crime. Sarah listened to the calls for revenge and felt her heart break for the innocent people who would suffer for the sins of their predecessors. But she also knew that justice had to be served somehow. The council leader called for order. This matter requires careful deliberation. The council will meet in closed session to determine the appropriate response to these revelations. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, many of them gave Sarah looks of pure hatred. She understood their anger. From their perspective, she was not a brave truth-teller but a representative of the species that had murdered their most trusted friends. Zethka approached her after the chamber had mostly emptied. You did the right thing, he said softly. The truth needed to be told? Did I? In 6 months, every human colony will be abandoned. Children who were born on alien worlds will be forced to return to Earth. Scientists working on important research will be expelled from their projects. All because I couldn't keep a secret. The secret was already coming out, Zethka reminded her. You chose to reveal it with dignity rather than have it discovered through investigation. That may count for something when the council decides. Humanity's fate. 3 days later, the council announced their decision. Sarah stood in the same chamber where she had confessed humanity's crime, waiting to hear the consequences. The council leader's voice was cold and formal. The Galactic Coalition finds the human species guilty of genocide, conspiracy, and mass deception. Effective immediately, all humans are banned from coalition space. Earth and its solar system are placed under permanent quarantine. Any human found outside the Sol system will be arrested and returned to Earth. Sarah felt the weight of her entire species' future crushing down on her. What about the humans currently living on colony worlds? They have 60 standard days to return to Earth. After that, any humans remaining in coalition space will be considered criminals. The decision was final and absolute. Humanity was cut off from the galaxy forever, but the council leader was not finished. However, the council recognizes that Ambassador Chun showed courage in revealing the truth when she could have remained silent. For this reason, Earth will be allowed to maintain communication arrays for scientific and cultural exchange. Perhaps in time, humanity can find redemption. As Sarah left the chamber for the final time, she thought about what the future held for her species. They were alone again as they had been before first contact. But they were also free from the weight of their terrible secret. On Earth, the revelation of Operation Starfall split humanity into two groups. Some blamed Sarah for destroying their place in the galaxy. Others thanked her for finally freeing them from a lie that had corrupted their entire civilization years past. Human colonies were abandoned and their populations returned to Earth. The galaxy moved on without them, with the memory of the Vithrek genocide served as a warning to future species about the price of deception, and on Earth, a new generation of humans grew up knowing the truth.